Hi and welcome to this special episode of The Final Whistle. It's been some time since we've done a video interview and we've brought it back because we've got a very special guest today.
Yep, and they're purring. They're looking like they'll be part of the title hunt till the last days of the English Premier League season. Liverpool are in the groove this year. So, of course, the Reds are the topic of this special episode. And because Raushan and I are not too fond of the red side of Merseyside, we've roped in a familiar face to add some balance. Welcome to the show, Liverpool fan Farah Nair.
Hi guys, always good to be back. But we have to introduce our next guest. Podcasts, radios, videos, live shows, a magazine, and website articles, you name it, they do it all. They cover all things Liverpool Football Club as well as the culture and music over in Merseyside, and they're pretty good at it too. So Podcast of the Year, Best Football Podcast are some of the awards that they've won over in the UK. And it's such a privilege to have one of them with us today. We have Craig Hannan from the Anfield Wrap. Craig, welcome.
Thank you. I'm excited to speak to you all.
Good to have you here. Just want to go straight into it. Tell us more about Anfield Wrap and how you guys got started.
So the Anfield Wrap started it was 10 years ago now, and it started as a hobby between some friends. It was match-going Liverpool fans who decided that the mainstream media didn't reflect their views. The things they were hearing on the radio and within TV, weren't reflective of what the fans that were going to the games and how they felt. And so they decided to take it upon themselves to create a podcast at a time when podcasts weren't, they weren't known. They weren't like nowadays where it's a part of everyone's routine. And it's grown from there, from one free podcast a week to a radio show to now being like a Netflix style subscription podcast. We have an app which you can download on Google Play on the App Store. We do live events all around the world, and yeah, we just try to share the experience of what it is to be a Liverpool fan, going to Anfield, going to Milan, going to anywhere, wherever Liverpool are, we'll be there. If they play in the moon, we'll go to the moon. Somehow we'll find a way. And yeah, that's what we're all about.
They might have played in the moon if Platini was still in charge. Thankfully, that's not the case anymore, right? No,
yeah,
but it's good to hear.
I'm not endorsing the moon as a place that football should be played if FIFA or anyone are listening, but yeah, we'll go if we have to.
No, honestly, it's a great privilege to have you here, Craig, because the way you talk about your growth, it's just #goals for us to grow a podcast and become away from the mainstream media and give people, fans, an alternative voice, right?
Exactly. Quite often we're the people that know better than the aged pundits or the former footballers that are rolled out. We're the people that are watching it every week and are emotionally attached and involved and connected to whatever's going on the pitch and whatever's going on in the background. So I've loved seeing sort of the growth of fan media, not just of ourselves, but all around the world. I've loved seeing podcasts created in different pockets in the world, talking about different aspects of football, because quite often they're the best ones rather than the the BBCs or the Sky Sports of the world.
Right, Craig, let's start off with something a bit light-hearted, I would say, because we look at Liverpool. I looked at your account rather on Twitter, the Anfield Wrap, and I saw that a lot of former Liverpool players are actually following the account. I think Jamie Carragher is one. I think Steve McMahon is one. So I'm quite sure you would have met former and maybe current Liverpool players or coaches. Who are some that have surprised you?
Oh, surprised me. In terms of the current, I've met quite a few. I think I loved meeting Andy Robertson. We interviewed Andy Robertson in America in 2018, and it was at the end of his first season at Liverpool. Obviously, they just reached Kiev, and to hear him talk about joining the club and his sort of him as a footballer trying to feel as if he belonged at Liverpool, having come from Hull, having come from the Scottish leagues before that, to where he got to the end of the season, which was people saying this is Liverpool's best left back we've seen in generations. So to hear him talk about that, and also just to meet him as a person, because he was just down to earth. He was everything that you'd want him to be. He was funny. I mean, all Scottish people are funny. Anyone I've met from Scotland's a funny person. But Andy Robertson was just everything you'd want him to be. And And I suppose Jurgen Klopp's the big one. I've met Jurgen a couple of times, and again, he's charismatic. When he walks into a room, there's an aura about him. You can see why, as a leader, people look up to him, listen to him, want to follow him, want to do whatever he says. If he asks you to jump, you ask how high. He's just that kind of person. We interviewed him a couple of times, but then I met him at a charity ball, and I don't know if you've seen the GIF. There's a GIF or a video on Twitter somewhere where he's dancing on the dance floor. I was behind him on that, and I'm a bit annoyed because I'm like, why didn't they capture me dancing behind Jurgen?
Speaking of Jurgen, I have to ask, speaking of Jurgen, did you get a hug from Jurgen? Because even as a Manchester United fan, I want a Jurgen Klopp hug, man.
Disgrace.
I would have done anything for a Jurgen Klopp hug, anything except have the confidence to ask him for a hug. I'll be honest. I would have loved one. So no, I didn't. I had to keep it strictly professional. But like every ounce of inside of me was like, just hug him. This is my only chance.
I can imagine it must be so great meeting someone like Jurgen, and to hear from you who've met him personally, to talk about the leader that he is. I think it's fair to see that the effect he's had on the team has been immense. And in yesterday's game, let's quickly touch on yesterday's game. Jurgen was as honest as he was frank, right? Speaking about Paul Tierney. Farah, you've been on the podcast for a while, so I'll bring you in here. We see on your Twitter how passionate you can be, but yesterday, I must say, you found a new overdrive. It was, wow. I've never seen you as animated. Well, I have. So the question is the red card for Harry Kane the biggest issue, or the non-red card for Harry Kane the biggest problem with then Andrew Robertson getting sent off, or was Paul Tierney just out of his depth throughout the game?
I just think, basically, I feel like at the end of the day, that point seemed very fair. Although I feel like if decisions were made properly and we got it our way, it might not have ended up, 2-0 at the end of the day, right? Because that penalty on Jota we should have gotten a penalty. No questions about that. And that Harry Kane challenge on Robertson, I don't see how that wasn't a red card. Like in real time, replay, everything, it just looks as red card as it could possibly be. And I think what I was very unhappy about is the fact that, yes, Robertson got sent off, got a red card, and that was probably justified. But if Tierney could have gone and reviewed that, why couldn't he have done that on that penalty incident and that Harry Kane incident as well? So that was the thing I was really aggravated about, because just the inconsistency is just so, I just don't understand it. It's really annoying.
Just to pick up on Farah's point, I think when you look at the incident between in Jota in the penalty box, look, I can see in real time why the penalty wasn't given. But you look at the replay and you have to question, how on earth did they not choose to review it? I think that's the biggest problem. Fine, in real time, not every referee can see that there was a penalty, but you have VAR for a reason. We are not living in a time maybe 10 years ago where we do not have the video assistant referee. We have it now, but it's not being used. And I think these are the kind of decisions that actually turn 1 point to 3 points. We could be looking at a scenario later on in the season where, City are above Liverpool by those points, because every point counts right now in the title race. And I think it was really, really bad refereeing from the refereeing team yesterday. And I think Jurgen Klopp, as you saw, was extremely annoyed. But I want to move the conversation along. Craig, I want to ask you, we saw a couple of times Spurs get in behind that Liverpool defense. And I know Virgil van Dijk was missing. I know Fabinho was missing. But were you concerned as to how easily Spurs got in behind?
I was concerned while I was watching the game, but I mean, this was a Liverpool team that had seen their midfield decimated. You mentioned Fabinho. There was Henderson as well, who, if Fabinho's not there, drops into the 6. There was Thiago as well, and then obviously Virgil van Dijk. The commentary kept continually talking about how Van Dijk was missing and how that would impact on the game. I actually thought the centre backs did okay. I thought there were times in which Liverpool felt very open, but I think that was a midfield problem rather than the Konate and Matip. We saw some brilliant blocks from Konate, and obviously he's a young footballer, but he looks excellent. these aren't two centre backs that I'm worried about. It's the fact that it's, you know, the midfield that's been decimated. And I think Fabinho was the biggest miss or loss for Liverpool yesterday, because, you know, Tyler Morton is only just young, and I think first half you saw his sort of his passing range and how he's able to sort of switch the play and make the play wider. But I just felt like the midfield weren't offering the protection that they normally would. And look, Fabinho is probably the best defensive midfielder in the world, if not top three. So any team who loses out on Fabinho, it's gonna be harder for them. I think the fact then that Henderson's also missing him, you know, that just made it even harder. And look, Liverpool wanted the game to go ahead. Liverpool were pushing for that. It wasn't like Chelsea where they were trying to sort of get it called off. They weren't. They wanted to play this because they know they've got, you know, a massive fixture list coming up. They probably back themselves as well, because Keita and Milner, you know, they're not bad footballers to throw in either. So look, it was a mixture of them all being missing that made it even more difficult for Liverpool, and that's why they were open, I think.
Does that depth even then worry you? Because you talk about this fixture congestion going into a relatively busy period of the season, right? So with players missing, we talk about Milner being a half-decent footballer, but he's on the wrong side of 30. And you got Naby, who's got his injury troubles as well. So is then the depth in midfield a big concern for you, Craig?
Liverpool's depth isn't a concern to me because of the, you know, if Keita and Milner are your fifth and sixth best best midfielders, then you're doing really well there. What worries me is the COVID situation, and if, for instance, we started out with 2 players who were missing against Newcastle with COVID, it then goes to sort of 5 or 6. If for Leeds we've got 2 more missing, you know, that's your squad decimated again. And this is a problem not just for Liverpool. This is a problem throughout the whole of the league. And this is why Chelsea wanted the game called off, and everyone was looking at their lineup and saying, well, they don't deserve to have it called off because their lineup is brilliant. But they still had 8 players out. So, you know, there's going to become a stage where it becomes a problem for teams across the league, and there's going to be, I'd be surprised if there isn't some sort of decision made today by the Premier League on, you know, what they do next, whether it's a circuit break or whether it's, you know, missing 2 or 3 games, whatever. They're going to have to think of something. But, you know, so no, this isn't just a Liverpool problem.
Farah, I just want to ask you, you know, Craig talked about Chelsea, and when we look at the title race, of course, Chelsea at one point were the leaders in that race. Now looking at Liverpool's performances, and of course taking into account how good Manchester City have been, do you expect Liverpool and City to be the 2 teams that challenge all the way, or do you still see Chelsea as being one of those?
No, for sure, Chelsea are definitely still in there. I generally think right after the new year, when we face Chelsea as well, that's going to be a big one. Right after the new year, I think on the 3rd of January, our time. Yes, correct. That's going to be a really huge one, because how that one plays out, that's going to even affect the title challenge overall, right? But I just feel that it's going to be that 3-way race. It's going to be City, Liverpool, Chelsea all the way through. I don't see any other way around it, to be honest.
Yeah, I completely agree. I do think Chelsea still are in there with a good shout despite the recent performances. But when we talk about January, of course, we've got the AFCON happening, the African Nations Tournament. We've seen some reports of it possibly getting canned because of COVID troubles and all. But we are now assuming that it goes ahead. Craig, does that concern you then, that Mo Salah and Sadio Mane, 2 of the better performing Liverpool players, will be taken out of the lineup? Who comes in, and also are you worried?
I think it's been a concern. It's been a concern for most Liverpool fans. I think the thing that we need to think as Liverpool fans is less about just ourselves and the team that we support, and as much about the fact that Mo Salah wants to go and play for his country, and Sadio Mane wants to go and represent Senegal at the African Nations. So it's not all about us. But in terms of our fixtures, I think as we speak, they maybe missed 2, maybe 3 games, and we've known that would be the case for quite a while now. So it's been up to the club to look in the summer and think, well, who do we have that can come in, make plans, because we've had long enough to come up with some sort of strategy to get by. I think that, you know, Chelsea are missing the goalkeeper as well, and he's been a massive part of getting them to where they are. So there's other clubs affected, but look, you want Mo Salah playing every game for Liverpool, because every game he steps onto the pitch, he either scores, assists. I know he didn't yesterday, but that's an anomaly now. So I think Liverpool have enough options up top to get through. I think with Diogo Jota, he's quietly been he's scored as many goals or more goals than anyone bar Mo Salah. And we've got Firmino coming back. And obviously Divock Origi in the background there, just doing bits every now and then. So I think we've got enough to get through. My only worry is around quarantining and around if someone catches COVID while they're away, and there's all these factors that are new that you add on to the fact that it's an AFCON happening.
Sorry, Craig. At this point, I just have to ask you. You talk about having had long enough to plan for the AFCON, right? On the ground, amongst the fans, is there any frustration that a club like Liverpool, who've been successful in the past few years, have money but haven't exactly spent it to stack their squad almost? Because if you look at Chelsea, they got 2 good players for every single position. I take into consideration the players you mentioned who could possibly come in, but Liverpool are not exactly stacked, are they? So is there a frustration that the money hasn't been reinvested in the club?
There's a definite frustration. There was a definite frustration when the transfer window closed. I was frustrated that we lost Wijnaldum and didn't bring someone else in. But then we've up until this point we've been okay. Like it's taken 3 players to be out with COVID for us to be worried about lack of options in that centre midfield, and that's something that you just can't. We can't plan for COVID. We can't buy players because other players might be out for 10 days. It's just not, it doesn't work. I thought that we probably needed someone up top, but then, you've had Divock Origi and Minamino in there playing the cup games and playing, coming on and making a difference at times in the league as well. And obviously in the Champions League. So, I think Liverpool have got by and have done very well up until this stage. So in theory, the club would say that their strategy is correct. Football fans always want us to spend more money. It's the same with every team. And also I think as football fans, we're also sort of, one of the things that we do is we look at other teams and think, well, they've got this and they've got that. And I've lost count of the amount of times I've looked at Man City's bench this season and thought, there's not much on there. And even with Chelsea, I think Liverpool's squad is stronger than Chelsea. So it's one of those where we always want more. We always want that one more player. If we sign the one more player, then we're like, well, no, we'll have another attacker. We'll always want more. It's just, we have to understand in COVID times and the way that these football teams have been hit by the pandemic, the uncertainty around what's going to happen next and what's going to happen next, that's a big factor in terms of the financial, aspect.
And I just want to know, with COVID raging so badly, it's easy for me as a football fan in Singapore to say the football must go on. I want something to watch. But what's the mood on the ground? What are people saying? Because there is concern amongst the players. There's also concern with this new variant amongst the stands. So we talk about a decision possibly happening. Should football honestly be going on in the current climate?
I mean, I don't think it's football fans' job to decide whether it should or it shouldn't go on. If the rules state that it can go on and you feel comfortable with going to the football match, then I say go. I'm triple jabbed. I've been going to the games. I've been abiding by the rules where I need to wear a mask here, don't wear a mask here, whatever. I've been doing everything they tell us. The UK's problem is who the UK's run by at the moment, and that's decision makers aren't abiding by the rules, and so it feels unfair for football fans to then be asked, well, what's right and what's wrong. I say if you feel safe going to the game, then go. I think one of the things that's been noticeable over the past 2 games is the empty seats, and that's people who are afraid to go catch COVID and then have COVID over Christmas. And I think that's a genuine worry for people. I think the Premier League might do a circuit breaker, and I think that'll be more so down to the cases, the cases and the fact that they won't want to put games behind closed doors again, because then, God knows when you get back out of that. So, I mean, look, again, I keep using the word uncertainty. It's like the most hateful word in the world nowadays, but it's true. Like the UK could go into lockdown next week and there's no fans in, there's no football, whatever. And I think it's just about enjoying it while you've got it at this stage.
All right, we're coming to close to the end of the interview, but I wanted to ask you this, Craig, ever since, this interview was confirmed, which was, We see in Singapore over the past few years, Liverpool fans have been happier than they have been used to, of course. My dad is a Liverpool fan, and I see the joy in him watching Liverpool games of late in the past year or so. How important has this Jurgen Klopp team been for the Liverpool City?
Oh, it's massive. What Jurgen Klopp has done is he's not just created a brilliant football team, he's changed the culture of the entire football club, not just on the pitch, but in the background. Everything that happens within Liverpool now, whether it's the work they do with partners, the brilliant brand videos they put out, everything on the business side of things has mostly been incredible. And that's all in Jurgen Klopp's image. So it's not just the fact that he's come and he's worked with the team to sign brilliant players. He's, the fact that for the fans, he's given us these moments and experiences that, many of us thought we maybe would never see, that we'd only ever seen on history DVDs that our dads or granddads tell us about. So, he's done all of that. But then when you look at what he's done with the team, that game against Spurs, there's no Thiago, no Fabinho, no Van Dijk, and you look at the squad and it's full of stars. It's full of these footballers who, get you off your seat and make you laugh out loud at the silly things they do in terms of how good it is. Mo Salah being, the number one, and just right through the team, it's a football side of stars, but it's a football side of like lovely people, I think. And that's the thing, is there's been a time in my life where I've watched Liverpool and I've felt very disconnected from the team that's on the pitch. These are just these footballers that you see on the pitch, and then that's it afterwards. But with this team, they've managed to create this culture within the entire club that, these footballers feel like you're watching yourself there. Like they're acting in the same way that you'd want to do. They're not just worried about how the football club does, but how what's going on in the community. They want to feel closer to the fans, and that's all down to Jurgen Klopp, because we've seen him do it at Dortmund, we've seen him do it at Mainz as well. So what he's done for the club and for the city is massive. Well, one half of the city. If I was a Blue, but yeah, I can only talk from a personal point of view and say that Jurgen Klopp's given me probably the top 5 nights of my life, whether it's Barcelona or it's Madrid or, it's beating United 5-0 at Old Trafford. And there's so much more to come, and that's the most exciting part.
I was praying you wouldn't bring that up, but sure.
I wouldn't apologize.
All right, guys, we have come to the end of the recording session. Thank you so much for your time, Craig and Farah. A lot of insights as well. But Craig, before I let you go, I've got to ask a tough question. At the start of the show, I did ask you, who are some of the interesting people that you have met? You talked about 2 positive ones in Andy Robertson and Jurgen Klopp. Give me one that, didn't quite give you a good feeling.
Oof.
Oh, that's a really hard question, because
Great question, Deepan. Great question.
They're all nice guys. That's what he's gonna say.
He could be a former player.
It's a really, really hard question, because I can't. I'm thinking of the current players, and there's been no one where who I've met and afterwards had a bad feeling about. And I think that's a reflection of one of the things Jurgen Klopp always says when he's signing footballers is they look at the person, not just the footballer. And I think you can sort of see that within the squad in terms of So the only one I could ever think of is when I was a kid, and this isn't through the Anfield Wrap. I met Robbie Fowler, and I got a picture with him, and in the picture he's eating a Magnum. I don't know if you get Magnums.
No, we do. Yeah.
The ice cream.
Yeah.
I always think couldn't you have just not ate the Magnum at the time? He was nice. He was nice. I just don't have the I can't think of anyone who have ever sort of met and been disappointed by. I think that's a measure of the team and the football club as well.
Farah, you got a Robbie Fowler story for us?
Okay, wait. Basically, I think it was during our Fox days, so we were at Fox and we used to get them into the studio, right? He was like Craig said, it wasn't that he was a bad person, just an awful person. He was just a little bit odd. I was having a conversation with him, but he wasn't in it. He was just yeah, sure. And I'm like, okay. He wasn't awful, but it was just so disconnected in that
No,
conversation.
he
So I was
is
like,
God,
maybe-
so he's probably having a lot of people on his phone talking
Yeah.
to him or something.
True. Like, who
I
are
actually
we to talk to him?
I actually have a quite good story. We when I was 8 years old, I met the Liverpool team, and they were playing in Belfast, and we went to the airport and we got to meet them, and it was in 1999, I think. And anyway, I got a picture.
Great year, 1999. Sorry, just needed to get that out of the way. Thanks. As you are.
I'm too young to have remembered anything. And I got a picture with Jamie Carragher and Danny Murphy, and there was one other. And then there was someone sat in the background. And at the time, I didn't realize who the person was that was sat in the background. And about 10 years later, I found the photos and I was looking at them. And I looked at the person in the background who wasn't looking at the camera, by the way. He was about to eat a burger, and it was Steven Gerrard. It was Steven Gerrard as a kid before he'd broken through.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Almost had a picture of Steven Gerrard without knowing it was Steven Gerrard, but he wasn't looking at the camera. He was eating a Burger King burger. But I'm not sure he
That's
would
actually quite cool.
career, but yeah.
Craig,
Wow.
Craig, you should actually ask Raushan who his favorite player is.
We don't reveal that publicly, Farah. You're not meant to put me under the spot here.
Come on, I've answered your questions.
go.
Who's your favorite footballer?
I am a Manchester United fan, but Steven Gerrard is my favorite player. Honestly, Steven Gerrard is something else. If United weren't as I'm happy to admit this. If United weren't as successful when I started watching football, I might have actually ended up on your side rather than the side that I find myself now. But yeah, Steven Gerrard is just such an immense leader for me. And yeah, I was so excited when he came back to Aston Villa, and he's doing really well. So hopefully he does as well as a manager as he did as a player.
And while this is Craig's first episode with us, I'm quite sure this will be Raushan's last episode of the final whistle. But again, thank you so much, Craig and Farah. So much of good discussions and good stories that you guys shared. Wishing you guys the best, and Liverpool the best as well as the season goes on.
I don't think he means it. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.